Hey guys, we are back updating the power rankings for the Amazing Race 35 following episode 8, and this was a really fun episode. There's a lot of fun drama from start to finish, and it was a really fun ride in general, but there are 17 to talk about, and let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into the video. So starting off at number 7, we have the boots from this week, and here we have Morgan and Lena. And to me, this wasn't too shocking as I found them to be one of the less consistent teams across the race. As obviously they got to a pretty rough start being second to last. Obviously they held that spot for most of the leg actually, and they even got ahead at one point where they were the 14 to finish the detour, but due to them getting lost on the way to the city, they fell all the way to 7th place, falling behind Steve and Anna Lee, to where they obviously got into a full race with them coming to the pit stop, and obviously they just lost out on that. So obviously that was pretty weird, sort of a late leg collapse there. But still, I find them to be one of the less impressive teams across the season, but still had some notable moments like them winning the Express Pass in leg 1, only for them to later misplay that. But obviously, they're out of the race now, which is why they're here at number 7. And with that, there are 6 teams left in the race to talk about. And as usual, I've been ranking them based on how I think they are to win the race from this point on. But number 6, and I did debate this to a degree, however, I do have my rationale. And here we have Joel and Garrett. And they're kind of a weird team, as on paper, they actually did improve upon their placing from the previous leg, where they did come into it in last place, but obviously through their performance here, they ended up improving to 4th place here, which again is technically an improvement. However, they were also the first team to start the roadblock, where obviously through the airport and the train, it essentially served as an equalizer, and through that they were actually the first team to reach the roadblock, but they ended up falling behind due to them messing up their first attempt where they thought Slovenia gained its independence in 1199, which I found pretty funny. But through that, they fell to 5th place there, and they kind of just remained there for a lot of the leg there. They're even second to last at one point, where obviously they finished the detour later, and they even have to turn around at one point so that they can pick up their notebook. So I found that kind of funny. But they do make up some ground. They do make up some ground when they get to the city at the end of the leg, where they are able to run away with the 4th place finish there. So again, it's not a terrible leg, but it's also one that was kind of inconsistent, and I think kind of speaks to their overall race ability, which is why they're here at number 6. Now moving on to number 5, and we have another team that's probably not the worst in the world, but another team that I don't feel that great about. And here we have Robin and Chelsea, who did do worse in this leg compared to last leg, where they did come into the leg in 2nd place, so obviously an equalizer does a lot to undo that, to where they are 5th place coming into the roadblock. And while they do make up some ground, even getting up to 2nd place by the start of the detour, they do fall behind, going back to 5th place, and that's pretty much where they remain for the rest of the leg. Again, not the worst leg in the world, but obviously one that has a bit of rockiness to it, which is why they're here at number 5. Now moving on to number 4, and we have a very interesting team to get into here. And here we have Steve and Anna Lee, who end up having a pretty notorious leg here, where obviously coming into it, they weren't in the best spot. They were in 5th place coming into it. Obviously equalizers don't really make that matter that much. But then obviously they get lost on the way to the roadblock there, causing them to fall way behind to last place here. And along the way, we get Anna Lee getting very emotional, talking about how they're about to lose the race. And she really acts that way for a lot of the episode, which is kind of funny, but also kind of annoying too at the same time. But obviously they are in last place for a lot of the leg there. They even go for the express pass at one point, not reading the sign saying it was already taken, going all the way up the stairs just to find out that it had been taken, which is obviously pretty bad. But they are able to recover late in the leg due to them catching up, taking advantage of the fact that Morgan and Lena got lost on the way to the city after the detour, and that bought them just enough time to where they're able to beat Morgan and Lena in a foot race to the pit stop, allowing them to skate on by here. Again, a very notable leg here where they barely survive, which I find very interesting there. Again, it's not a good leg really at all, and again, I think it speaks to them being very inconsistent across the race. But again, I do still have a bit more faith in them going forward than the teams we already talked about based off their race ability. But again, it's still worth noting how bad this leg was for them in general, which is why they're here at number 4. Now moving on to number 3, and it is the same top 3 as last week. It's just a matter of ordering them. But number 3, I actually decided to once again go with Greg and John, who did win their second leg in a row. And I believe they're the winningest team right now on the leg, where they have won 3 legs, which by itself is pretty impressive. But still, I get the sense that they're going to be this team that will eventually be done in by their mistakes. Where even in this episode, we see them going for the express pass at one point, thinking that they can catch up to Rob and Corey. And obviously they end up turning around, but then we get a confessional from Rob and Corey saying that they didn't see that there was another set of stairs, and that had they kept going, that they would have passed Rob and Corey. So I felt like the edit was kind of dunking on them there, and I feel like mixing that in with other things about their edit, I just feel like they're going to be this team sort of similar to Ryan and Dusty, so they're probably going to get towards the end of the race, but come up short by the end of it. Now, if you are looking at the leg in general, it's pretty good, where they are able to get onto the first flight. They're the only team that's able to book their first flight at the travel agency, which is pretty good. And while they are part of this plan to try and get around the trains, that is unsuccessful there. They do fall to 4th place by the start of the roadblock. They're able to get back to 3rd place by the end of it. They're able to be the first team to start the detour, but they fall to 3rd place by the end of it, sort of falling behind. But through proper navigation, they're able to get the 2nd place. And by the end, they're just able to beat Todd and Ashley in a foot race, sort of relying on their physical ability there. So again, it's definitely a leg that I think embodies their abilities a lot. It shows that they're probably one of the better teams on the cast, but probably not the most consistent, and probably a team that, again, will probably come up short at the end of it, both by their race ability and by the edit, which is why they're here number 3. Now moving on to number 2, and I thought it was actually a bit closer this week compared to last week with these top 2 placements. But for now, I'm still going to stick with my guns, even though people are probably not going to be happy with this. But I do have Rob and Corey here. And again, this was a pretty good leg for them, where they obviously are one of the teams able to get onto the earlier flight due to them being on standby. And they are in the front of the pack for a lot of the leg here. They're obviously able to go for the express pass and ultimately win it, largely taking advantage of a mistake from Todd and Ashley there. Now they do fall behind to 4th place, mainly due to the fact that they went for the express pass, but they are still able to finish the detour relatively quickly, getting back to 2nd place where they were before. And they do fall behind to a degree. They do fall to 3rd place by the end of it, which isn't ideal, but they are still clearly shown to be one of the better teams across the season here. And I felt like in general, the edit here was very positive for them, really highlighting how good of a day that this ended up being for them, with them getting the express pass and with them doing relatively well across the leg here. And I still stand by what I said about them earlier, but again, I am still sticking to my guns here, and I'm going to leave them here at number 2. And now at number 1, the person I believe is the most likely to win the Amazing Race 35 right now is still Todd and Ashley. Now, I know people have been complaining about this to a degree. I know people think that I'm just being ridiculous here by putting them here at number 1, but I still feel like the edit is kind of propping them up, where early on the episode, they are literally the ones to call out the fact that Greg and John and Rob and Corey are these more physical teams and that they need to do something about them, which I feel like sets them up pretty well. And they are still in the top half for a lot of the leg here. Now, mind you, they do make a bit of a mistake here, where they are the first to the marker. They're the first team that had the opportunity to go for the express pass, but obviously they have a lot of trouble finding the entrance to the staircase, and through that, they end up falling behind there. They even try to go for the express pass even after seeing Rob and Corey going for it, only for them to later turn around, which obviously isn't ideal, though obviously they are still able to do pretty well across the leg. They're the first to finish the detour, first to reach the marker there, and it's really just a foot race to the pit stop between them and Greg and John, obviously just barely losing out on them to secure the 2nd place finish there. So it's still a pretty good leg for them. It's definitely a better leg than what it was for them last time. And again, I still feel like they're probably this team that could definitely just be a consistent force across the season, and then ultimately edge out these more physical teams by the end of it. So I think that's definitely a big factor in why I still have a lot of faith in them, even though the edit still has kind of dunked on them at points. Again, like the whole express pass thing is pretty bad, but I still think they're going to do pretty well across the season, which is why they're here at number 1. And there we go. That will do it for this week's video. If you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe. Really helps out with the channel. I'll be back again next week to update the Power Rankings again, so you can stay tuned for that. I'm covering Survivor 45 and Survivor UK, so you can expect weekly Power Rankings of those shows. I'm on Patreon now, so if you want to consider supporting the channel, you can do so by clicking the link in the description. And you can also join the Discord server by also clicking the link in the description. There's a lot of stuff coming your way, but for now, that's the video. See ya.